Hello, everybody. This is episode number 14 of Grow the Buck Up. It is the fifth and final episode in the Love Yourself series. You're never too old for fun. Now, adulting is hard. Setting up eye appointments, dental, doctor, specialist, working, budgeting, bills, investing, 401ks, IRAs, HSAs, taxes, car insurance, house, rental, health insurance, cooking, meal prepping, household cleaning, fixing your house. Anything and everything. These are just some of the basics. And if you take a closer look, every section that I just listed there and more gets even more detailed. You have a car, you have your car maintenance. You have your tags, you have your inspections, you have your tires. If you want to be cooking, you have to plan it. You have to take the trip to the store. You have to prep it. You have to eat it. You have to clean up. There are just so many things to do, responsibilities to have as an adult, that it just fills your life. And looking at that, it's no wonder that people forget to make time to have fun. How can you have fun when there's always 1,000 things to do on your to-do list? How can you have fun when you're always worrying about the things that you have to do, the things you're forgetting to do? And how can you change this? Today, we'll take a look at some solutions, some changes to the mind, some ways that we can bring fun back into our lives. And we'll take a look back at when we used to have more fun to maybe get some ideas for that. So first, let's time travel back to when we were young and carefree and fun was simply natural. Where did that fun usually originate? This is the best question I can start by asking, where did that fun originate? And it originated from boredom. How many times as a child can you remember being bored? Personally, I remember so many days, so many hours where time just never moved. It was torturous how slow time moved back then. And it wasn't even always, sometimes it was at school, obviously, but there were plenty of times where I would just be sitting in my room and time would just be crawling and I was just waiting for the next day, waiting to grow up a little bit more. But often, from this boredom, I came up with creative solutions to enjoy my life in that time. Because I was forced to, because I was bored. Sometimes, it was something as simple as turning the neighborhood into a wiffle ball golf course. Other times, it was creating elaborate stories for action figures, spending all day progressing through them. Sometimes these events involved friends. Sometimes I was alone. But I remember the fun that I had. To this day, I remember so many of those moments where I was just like, wow, that was a great time. That was so fun. I was doing nothing that day, and then it just turned into the best day ever. And I'm sure you yourself can come up with a few great examples as well. And I remember that I didn't have a worry on my mind. All of my energy and focus in those moments simply went towards not being bored. And I got quite good at it as I aged. Now we'll come back to this thought, but for now let's just move forward a few more years. So then I hit the real world, and all of a sudden responsibility was thrust upon me, and instead of being bored, I felt like every moment I was just constantly trying to survive. I laid awake every night trying to just go through my list of things in my head that I needed to do, while also trying to remember the 10 other things that I knew I forgot about, but I knew that at least I had known that I had forgotten about them. And no matter how much I tried to remember, I always ended up failing somewhere, falling short, missing some deadline, whatever it was. Sometimes it didn't matter. Other times it did a lot, and I'd be reprimanded or have to pay a fine or have to deal with another consequence. And I think this is something that a lot of people my age, younger and older, all go through. You see it every day. People that are just under so much stress, just constantly seem like they're drowning and just trying to stay afloat. Just whatever it is, and just dealing with consequences because there's not even that time to think and plan. And this often led to me personally getting mad at myself, telling myself I had to grow up more, which of course led to even more pressure and even less fun in my life. Now fast forward a few more years, and things definitely started to get a little bit easier simply by the repetition of these actions. But I noticed that this autopilot of responsibilities was actually an autopilot of life as well. Every weekday was the same. Every weekend was me just rushing to catch up on laundry, cleaning, errands, and more. Even things like vacations felt stressful to me, just by the sheer amount of planning and responsibility required. I would try and have so many things going on a vacation that I would come home and I would just be exhausted and even more stressed by the trip than if I had not even gone. I felt like I was just getting too old to have fun anymore. Then one evening, I was hanging out after work when I got a text from my friend. Now, this friend of mine, growing up, had a pretty tough life. I would definitely say that I was dealt a much better hand and was much more privileged in a lot of various ways than her. And yet, every day, she always had a smile on her face and always seemed to still be enjoying life way more than I was. So she sent me a text and asked if I wanted to just drive around and hang out. And this was like 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and I had work the next day, and I was planning on just going to bed pretty soon, watching some Netflix and then going to sleep. And I thought about turning it down and saying, I got to go to work tomorrow. We'll hang out later. But I was kind of at that breaking point, and I was just so tired of the standard routine. And I thought, you know what? Getting out, even for a drive, could be a nice change of pace. And so we started out just driving around town. And then within minutes, I look over and she's blasting the music, singing along, dancing, and just having the time of her life. And I remember looking at her and thinking, you've been dealt such a tough hand in life, and yet you seem to be having so much more fun than I am. How is this possible? And as we continued down the road, she saw a bowling alley and just spur of the moment thought, let's go bowling. And so we did. And by the end of the night, I was singing and dancing and bowling and having the best time that I had had in years. And finally, when I got home, I knew that I had to change my life to include real fun again, because I had missed that for so long. And it was something that I didn't even think was possible anymore. I didn't even think it was something that I could attain anymore. I thought that was just something for the children, for when I was a child. And then being an adult was just not fun. So what did I do? How did I change it? What can you do to change it if that's how you feel? I'm going to go ahead and term it now. We're just going to call it minimalist adulting. Let me explain. First, I went back to that thought that I had as a child, which was, it was easy to have fun when I could spend all of my energy focusing on just that, on not being bored and having fun. So I knew that I needed to adjust how I prioritized events and things in my life. What were all those things, though? I had to figure that out because I was constantly forgetting them, remembering them, having them in and out and not sure. And when they'd come up, I'd jump on them and then leave it again. And it was too much to have up in my mind. So I wrote out a list of every single responsibility in my life, every bill, every appointment, daily things like flossing and brushing my teeth and eating, to annual things like renewing my lease, renewing insurance, anything like that. I spent a couple of days doing this, going through bills, emails, text, whatever it was, to see what are responsibilities that I have had within the past year, 2 years. And I wrote all of them down in a giant list. And next, I simply started crossing out different sources from that list that I could remove. It's amazing how many things on that list were self-created responsibilities or just accumulated because somebody else said I should have that responsibility. Many of them weren't really improving my life that much when I actually thought about it, but rather were just gathered for no reason or some reason that might have been good in my mind a while ago, but clearly was past. So I spent the rest of the day simply trying to become a responsibility minimalist or a minimalist adult. Some of those things I only did because others considered, like I said. But I just had to say, you be you, I'm going to be me, and I'm going to start designing a better life for myself. Now, not only did I remove many responsibilities, but I also consolidated a lot as well. Let me get all of my bills delivered on the same day. Let me move my credit card statements to the same day. Automating things that I could and simplifying what I couldn't. And by the end of the week, I had a life that was just so much simpler. And from that, I gained back hours. I gained back days per week. And it was so much more time brought to myself that now I thought, now I can have fun. But how do I have fun with this time was still the question. Well, once again, I went back to thinking about where my fun as a child came from. Where did all of my creativity and my ideas come from? And it was boredom once again. And I hadn't been bored in such a long time. Exhausted? Sure. But bored? Never. So I started planning in time for this boredom, creating fun little challenges with the time as well. You know what? I'm going to spend this weekend in the apartment, alone, It's already going to be cleaned. It's already going to have the responsibilities taken care of. And I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. Or I'm going to go to the park and spend a day or a couple of hours, whatever it is, at the park. And I'm just going to sit there. Or I'll take 2 hours with a pen and paper and just sit on the couch. And with all of these activities, of course, I would take out electronics, as that is a great way to just distract yourself and forever let yourself not be bored, but also not really be taking advantage of a lot of the fun that you want to be having, right? And I'm not saying electronics are terrible. Obviously, I spend a ton of time on them myself, but I found that it was very important in these moments to be completely free of that. So I only had me and my brain to focus on and whatever environment I was in. And as expected, out of boredom sprung all sorts of ideas. I started picking up decks of cards in my apartment, practicing different flourishes, creating magic tricks, learning new ones, practicing them. I went out and bought cheap disc golf sets to play with, and then went and played when I was at the park because I was bored and I needed something to do. With the pen and paper, I designed a board game. And it wasn't just a basic little design. I created like a 13-page rule book for it. I created all of these tokens, everything that I would need for a board game. And I went through different versions and iterations. And I have even more designs written down, all because I sat there bored for a couple of hours on my couch. And all of these activities, the more bored that I was, the more creative that I became. And whenever I felt like I was running out of ideas, I would just look back at my childhood and see the sorts of things that I enjoyed back then. Oftentimes, I found I still enjoyed those things today, even if it was in a slightly different form. Maybe I'm not going to turn the neighborhood into a wiffle ball golf course now, but I could just go to an actual golf course. Maybe I'm not jumping on a trampoline in the backyard, but I could go to a trampoline park down the street. One of those like gyms, right? Maybe I'm not going to be building stuff with Legos still, but I'm probably still going to be building stuff with Legos and having a lot of fun doing it. When's the last time that you played with Legos? And why? And then I took this thought process, I took this minimalist adulting, and I applied it to other parts of my life as well. A vacation is supposed to be fun and relaxing. I should plan out and have the basic stuff set up, the trip, right? The travel to and from and some accommodations. But I should leave some time in there to be bored, to just enjoy the environment, to be in a new environment where I can take advantage of that and let my mind wander. If I go to a dinner or a lunch, I should have time to sit down and chat with others, chat with the waitress or waiter, get up and walk around, explore the outside of the building. If I find myself on a random Wednesday wanting to go out for a drive, I should have time and freedom to go out for that drive and sing and dance and maybe even go bowl. Even things like responsibilities at work can be cut down to give you more time to focus on what's important, rather than all of the fluff and all of the worry of the next deadline and next project. If you can sit there and actually focus on what you want to do and what you're supposed to be doing there, you can find a lot more fun even within your work. And I know right now it might seem a little bit difficult to even think if this life is for you. But I promise it's at least worth a try. When your mind and days are cluttered, your view of a fun life simply gets blocked and you start to lose hope of it ever coming back. At least that's how it felt to me. Make time now to take back the life that you want. So my challenge for you this week is actually going to be two different challenges. The first one is a bigger one, and that is to list out all of your responsibilities. I think it is super important. You guys know that I love writing stuff down on paper. I think it's super important if you list them all out and you can just visually see them and then make adjustments as you need. What can you get rid of? What can you combine? What is important and what's not? So just list them and just take a look at everything that you do. And the second challenge is I want you to plan at least 1 hour of boredom in the next week where you won't do anything but be bored and let your mind wander. So those are my two challenges. Hopefully that can get the ball rolling and get you started on your way towards minimalist adulting. That's all I have for this week. Tune in next week for episode number 15 and the first episode in the Love Others series. Misery loves company, so does joy. You can find these podcasts, as always, live on Twitch, on my YouTube at youtube.com/growthebuckup, on any of the popular podcast feeds, or on my own site, www.growthebuckup.com. That's all I have for now. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to grow the buck up.